Hey, what's shaking here in Las Vegas? It is in the 8 o'clock hour, and we are going to spin some more tunes, but we're going to talk to Jeff Alumbaugh from Rock City Backdrops. I've known Jeff for a couple of years now. He's made a handful of backdrops for myself and some of my friends, and I got a bunch of questions for him. You know, you go to a concert and you see this beautiful, glorious artwork in the back. It's typically a computer image that some art guy made on his computer, and they put it on the album, and Jeff has to take that image and then translate that to a fabric, and he does all that by hand. Hey, Jeff, you there, buddy?
Yeah, man. How's it going, Troy?
Dude, thanks for coming on, man. I got to tell you, I've been to a million concerts, and if you don't mind cutting that air, it's nice and chilly here in Las Vegas, and I thought I'd never say that. You know, I've been to a bunch of concerts, and you know, I see these backdrops. You know, thank God that there's still people doing old school backdrops, because I just don't like the LED machines. I think they look great.
Right.
They certainly can add to your light show, but it's almost so distracting. It's like I want a warning that I might have an epileptic seizure by watching, because you know, because they're over-programming to the music, and it's almost like the band is up there as a silhouette, and you're just watching a backdrop. And I want to see the band perform. And so anyway, how long have you been doing this? I mean, you're actually painting on fire-retardant material to make this legal, obviously. And tell me about this. They have to be, you know, fire certified. But yeah, I did my first one when I was 21. Way back in the day, I walked into a bar and, you know, seen a band. It's like, man, that'd be kind of cool to be doing stuff behind the bands. And that's where it started. You know, but back then there was no internet, so it was all footwork, which made it even harder. But nowadays with the internet, you can reach people all around the world. It's pretty cool. I definitely enjoy it. You know, I saw one of your recent pieces of work that actually had ripples in it, but it wasn't, the fabric's not rippled, the painting is rippled. So it's a three-dimensional painting, so to speak. Can you tell me about, so, you know, the process goes, you know, A, B, C, and D. So I call you up and I'm like, dude, I just had this graphics guy put together this crazy 20-color artwork, and I want it to sit behind my band at the Barn Grill down the street. I need a 7 or a 10 by 14, whatever. What's the process for you to translate from this digital image to something that you have to hand paint in your warehouse or your studio? Can you give me the ins and outs on that?
For me, it's a lot easier, because really all I need is just to see some clean artwork. It doesn't have to be a high resolution like what's required to print them. I just need to see some clean artwork, and I go from there. You know, depending on the artwork, it kind of steers me on which process I need to do to reproduce that.
But let me ask you this. So you get a copy of a CD or maybe an album, or they send you something that's 12 inches by 12 inches. How do you take that and turn that into, for example, you've done, you know, Anthrax, and you've done Tesla, you've done some big ass, you've done the Raskins, you know, you've done some huge. I mean, these are massive pieces of artwork. These are 30 feet by 25 feet, or whatever the dims are on that, you know, dimensions, sorry. Tell me about, I mean, how do you translate that and make that all be, you know, everything centered and painted and, you know, cohesive?
I think it's magic, Troy. I think it's magic.
I think he's got a magic wand.
Like I said, it all depends on the artwork. I'm pretty protective of my trade secrets, so I don't want to put that out there too much. But
well, great. That was Jeff from Rock City Backdrops. We're going to spin some more music. No, I'm sorry, man. I wanted to have your secrets, but if you can't give me your secrets, we're done. No, but I mean, you know, obviously, there is a little bit of a process. If you can just kind of clue me into how do you take something that's so small and make it so big? And there's a sexual joke in there somewhere, but we're talking about Harvey Weinstein, and it's all weird, so maybe we shouldn't talk about, you know, that.
Well, there's a lot of times where it needs to be projected up onto the backdrop, and you draw it out with a marker and then paint between the lines.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
But there's a lot of other factors that work into that, as far as all the color blends and the shading, and, you know, it's really hard to say an exact process, because every piece of artwork is pretty much different, and the sizes vary.
It's just it's a matter of knowing how to get to that end product the fastest way and to make it look clean,
So I'm looking at your client list, and these are just a few, just to mention off the top of our heads here. You've done Quiet Riot, Night Ranger, Queensryche. I've seen the Tesla one, which is really impressive. You did Bullet Boys. I mean, that one's great. I actually had put together that artwork for Mark and the band.
Oh, is that right? That's
yeah,
cool.
I actually put that
right
artwork
on.
together, and then of course you ended up doing it. Shanker. I remember seeing that one. I was with a booking agency on that tour for the backdrop that you did. So I'm familiar with a lot of your work, and it's
Cool.
so funny. You see it, and then you go, "Hey, who did your stuff?" Because I know a guy, and it's like, "Oh, this guy Jeff." I'm like, that's the guy I know. You know what I mean? So it's great,
Yeah,
man. I don't recall. You talked about the internet. And I think the way that I came across you was just doing a search, like who does backdrops, because I see a lot of bands. I play small places and I play big places, and I see that plastic where they run it through a printer or whatever. And
yeah, that's like the vinyl banners.
Yeah,
There's
the
a lot
vinyl.
of companies out there doing vinyl, and no vinyl.
Yeah, I think vinyl's good when you're spinning the White Album, but it's not good for your band logo behind you on stage. It just looks cheap, and I'm surprised that people do that. You are definitely a rare breed in this industry doing what you're doing, where you're actually hand painting on a cloth, essentially, right?
Yes, yeah. It makes all the difference in the world, especially under stage lights. I mean, with vinyl up there, you're getting the glare off of that vinyl because it's plastic, and it's all about doing it in fabric and paints.
Which one's your favorite? You've done over, I don't know, at this point, 400, 500, 600. Which one's your favorite one? Which is the one that you look at and go, that's my Mona Lisa right there?
I think I really enjoyed the Tesla one, because it was just so big. I'm all about going big, but there's been a few smaller club bands that I've done that I've really liked the artwork.
Sure.
One of them was what you mentioned, was the one with where it looks like the ripples are in the fabric. When it's not, it's really painted. It's just laying flat. But,
yes.
I like the big stuff. I think probably Tessa's my favorite. Survivors was pretty cool. That was a special effects backdrop where the tiger face shows up in the back, depending on how you hit it with the lights. And yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of cool ones. I've enjoyed it all.
You mentioned that you can, with certain lighting and stuff like that, perhaps like a black light. Do you use a certain ink that might react to that black light?
There's paints out there that it gets kind of crazy, and there's clear paints that don't show up under normal lighting, where if you hit it with a black light, then all of a sudden it shows up. And there's paints that are clear that'll turn black with a black light. So you can coat over something that's one color with this special paint, hit it with a black light, and it just disappears. It goes away into the background.
Wow.
There's all kinds of stuff you can do. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. You can be really creative with some stuff.
What's the turnaround time for you to do? I mean, obviously it varies based on the artwork and the size of the backdrop, but what's your turnaround time? Say somebody wants to do what's your standard size? I mean, do you do a lot of big arena size backdrops, or you find yourself doing clubs?
Yeah. It's a mixture of both. I do a lot of arena stuff, and those get up to, 40 feet by 60 feet, all the way down to, 6 feet by 10 feet for some of the club bands.
Sure.
But I'm trained to do the big stuff. I learned that on billboards there in Vegas. That's where I got a lot of my training, was climbing up on billboards and painting them there on the strip. And it's amazing. So yeah, the bigger the better. I like the big stuff.
Wow, right on. That's cool. So, how does one get into this industry offering to do backdrops? Back in the day when I was in my garage, we would take a white sheet, typically from the closet of sheets, and then my mom would be furious with me. We'd grab markers and we would write our, we were in the Kiss tribute band or whatever in my garage, annoying my neighbors. But how did that turn into you going, wow, I can do this. And then obviously you have to have the technique and the talent. I just like doing it because we always try to emulate our heroes. But how did this turn into a career for you?
I've been an artist since I was born. I've got all my artwork since preschool. I kept everything because I knew I was going to be an artist, and I loved music. And it just kind of dawned on me. So you know what, man, combine the two. There seems to be a need for it, so I went for it. And I've paid my dues along the way. But I'm very blessed. I'm very thankful for everything that I've been able to do in the industry.
Any crazy stories delivering the product, last minute, or you had to? I've talked to you in the past, and you've mentioned having to like hop on a red eye to get the drop to the gig. Tell me about your most crazy situation.
Sometimes it gets pretty crazy, especially with the short notice stuff. Probably the craziest one that comes to mind is doing the backdrop for Night Rangers tour. It was so short. I didn't have time to order in my material from LA, so I jumped a plane, went out there, picked up 80 pounds of material that's in a cardboard box, hauled it back to the airport, and got back here into Denver and did a marathon for 2 days painting this backdrop. And it was cutting it so close to my deadline of the flight I had to catch to make their show, because they were going to be streaming live on the internet. They're in Chicago. On my way to the airport, I stopped at Walmart, picked up a big plastic bin, and put this thing in a bin. And trying to carry that through the airport was absolutely impossible. There was no dollies available, so it's like, man, what am I going to do? So I went into the lost and found luggage section, and I asked them, "You guys happen to have a roll-around suitcase that somebody has left behind?" "Yep, we do." And they drag out this ragged thing. It's dirty. It's tore. There's wires hanging off of it. And it's like, oh man, but it fit in it, and it had wheels. So that's all I needed at that moment. So I get off the plane, and it's coming through the luggage carousel, and these wires are getting caught up in the carousel there, and people's looking at my luggage like, what's going on here? How can this guy even afford a plane ticket? Look at his luggage. It was just. It was
I
crazy.
I get asked the same question when they see me. When I just cruise through the airport, they just look at me and go, "How is this guy here? He must be lost."
Yeah.
The Greyhound's down the road, bro.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but it gets kind of crazy sometimes. It really does, and I like that. That's my energy. That's what keeps me going, is just doing the crazy stuff.
Well, the music industry in itself, no matter what you're doing, is typically kind of crazy, and when you're dealing with artists and bands that have deadlines that will change for no apparent reason, and everything's always a hurry up and wait, or, hey man, we're going on tour in 3 months. Nobody ever calls the backdrop guy 3 months before the tour. They call him 3 days before the tour. It's the same thing with everything,
Yep. Oh yeah.
So, you find yourself having to work in an industry that is, at a drop of a dime kind of thing. And that's cool. You're willing to hop a plane and get material. And so what's this material? It's fire retardant. What is it?
I usually do a lot of my stuff on muslin.
And is it sprayed with something, or is it just inherently fire retardant?
No, it's treated. It's pre-treated.
And
with the chemical to make it fire retardant.
Gosh, and you probably can't get that at Michael's or anything, right? You have to.
Oh no, it's definitely a special order stuff. But with the industry today, everything's got to be fire retardant if it's going to be on a stage.
Yeah, obviously, well, this wasn't a backdrop issue, but this was an issue that happened, on the East Coast, where a band brought some scary pyrotechnics into a club that, their roof, they had spray painted black a drop ceiling. And I don't know, do you think that was what prompted the, that fire retardant demand, or
definitely.
Is it? Yeah,
definitely. Yep, I seen an immediate change after that.
Wow,
Interesting. When that fire happened, everything changed.
Yeah, I guess for the better. Unfortunately, it was at quite an expense, But
right.
I played that venue back in 2001, and when I'd heard that it had gone down there and that there was pyro used, I was like, who would use? That would be one of those bands or one of those clubs that you play many different venues. When you're on a certain level playing clubs, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, maybe you're playing the smaller ones on the Wednesday and Thursday, and then Friday, Saturday, you get to the bigger venues, the bigger rooms, the theaters, based on the market. And, when I'd heard that it was a station in Rhode Island, I was like, wait, who would want to have pyro there? And how many people allowed that decision to be made? Because, number one, it's a small club. And why would you waste your pyro there at a small, you save it for the theater, save it for, most of these gerbs are shooting 15 feet in the air. Well, from the drum riser, when I played that club, I could put my hand up in the air and I can almost touch the ceiling.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep,
so
right.
I'm just, it's such a shame that something like that had to happen. But that, you think that really changed a lot of regulations in this business with respect to...
It did, unfortunately it was a bad event, but I think it saved a lot of lives in the long run.
Sure.
Unfortunately, sometimes bad things have to happen for the better.
Yeah,
and
yeah, absolutely.
It's pretty sad that it works that way, but at least something comes from it,
I totally get you. Yeah, I'm just, kind of thinking I actually had, some friends that were a part of that, and I knew Ty, the guitar player from Great White. And so, so you just start thinking about that, these people didn't have to, but they sacrificed their lives for, something better. And, when I do a tour and they ask if there's a backdrop, and we say yes, I get hit up for the fire cert,
Oh, yeah.
And so it's good to see that everybody's on it and everybody thinks about it, and it's a big deal, it really is. And it should be.
Yes, yep, I totally agree. It definitely should be.
So listen, when I join my 25th band, how do we reach you to get a backdrop made by you?
You can go through my website at concertbackdrops.com.
Okay.
And I'm on Facebook under Rock City Backdrops.
That's awesome.
And Twitter,
so any band, big or small, can hit you up for a backdrop.
Oh, absolutely. Yep, absolutely. I focus on the big stuff, and I have a small team working with me now that helps with the smaller stuff. But I definitely always oversee the paint process and the quality. If I don't like it, it don't leave the shop.
Right on. Well, I think I've had, throughout the years, at least 4 backdrops done, either through our connection for bands that I'm not even in, and plus the bands I have been in, and it's always been great quality. You know what I mean? So,
thank you.
I refer you all the time because you do good stuff, and you're still an old school guy. You don't do things by the numbers. You get it done, but you're flexible, and in this industry, it's super huge, So
yeah, yep. I'm definitely an artist first. Like I said, I'm very grateful for the opportunity that I've had. I really can't ask for more. Millions of people have seen my artwork.
I know, and they don't even know it. And they have no idea how it got done, and that's why I wanted to bring you on, because I think it's a really cool thing you're doing. But hey, listen, we're going to spin some more tracks. That was Jeff Alumbaugh from Rock City Backdrops. And, thanks for coming on, man, and I can't wait to hit you up again for another backdrop.
Okay, cool, man. Thanks for having me. It was my pleasure, for sure.
Cheers, bro. All the best.
All right, man. You too. Rock on.